Welcome everyone, my name is Apple and welcome to my new YouTube channel, Humbly Fruit. I have gaming things and Twitch and all of that, but I decided to jump into the world of bookish things. A little bit about me, since this is my first video. I was in school for a very long time, actually 14 years, because I did an undergrad, I did a master's, I did a PhD, and I'm no longer in school and I work a great job, not really related to my field, but for those 14 years, I was not allowed to, it's not that I wasn't allowed to, but I didn't have the bandwidth to read for pleasure. Every now and then over the summers, if I had a little bit of a lighter summer, but when I got to grad school, there was just always something to do. And I essentially stopped reading. I went from reading 20 books a week, it felt like. I know in high school, there was one time, I'm sure some of the books were small, I don't remember what they were, but one of my proudest moments was when I was at home. I think I had wisdom teeth surgery. I had my wisdom teeth taken out at the beginning of spring break, and so I was home, didn't have to work or do anything, and I read 28 books. I was like so happy. In other words, I used to read a lot. And I kept reading academic things, but I stopped reading for fun. In 2022, there were a couple books that I read. I had to go back and check my library account. I got 2 books in 2022. I actually checked out many more than that, but I never read any of the others, only the 2. And then I read one book earlier this year in January, but it was a nonfiction book, more of an autobiography. But in April, I decided it was time to start reading again. I got my library card. I said, let's go exploring, and found a few books, got them, and I have not been able to put books down. I ended up reading 10 books in April, and this video is to cover those books. I'm sure you've heard of most of them, but maybe there's going to be some new ones for you. Disclaimer. As with any rating system, the 5-star rating system that I'm going to use is not perfect. However, it's my own. It's very similar to what other people are using, but I want to be clear. The biggest thing is 3 stars doesn't mean it's bad, okay?
Now you're all right.
This is how I define my stars. 1 star, awful, please do not read this book. For whatever reason, just no, absolutely not. Trash. Unless the author's in the room with me, I won't call it trash. I'll call it trash. 2 stars. Not for me, but it might be for someone else. This is a book that I really just did not vibe with. It's got redeeming factors. I don't want to say that it's trash, but I'll let someone else decide. That's 2 stars. 3 stars. Okay, this book was good. I enjoyed it. Am I going to quickly read it again? Probably not. There might not be a reread, but it was pretty good. It wasn't fantastic prose, or there were other elements that were lacking. There's a lot of room for growth. It was average. It's the true average. Glad I read it, but not life-changing. 4 stars. This was a very good book. Again, not necessarily life-changing, but the prose was beautiful, or the characters had depth and were well written, but it wasn't a perfect story. It has a little bit to go. 4 stars, but I will definitely recommend it to other people, whereas I think 3 stars, maybe that's something I should add. 3, I wouldn't necessarily recommend to someone else. 4, I would probably recommend, be like, yeah, it wasn't like my top of the top, but it was a pretty good book. You'd probably like it. 5 stars. Not only is this book technically good and all of the elements, character, plot, world building, grammar, syntax, not only is that good, but it sat with me. I'm still thinking about this book days or even weeks later. This is the book that is much more likely to be life-changing and memorable for me. 5 stars, absolutely do recommend to other people. Now, with this rating system, it's not black and white. We all love books. You get it. Some books you vibe with, some you don't. Other people are going to vibe with it. Others aren't. That's fine. If you hate my book recommendations, well, no one's perfect. I'm talking about you, not me. No one's perfect. This is It's fine. It's fine. It's fine if you hate the books that I absolutely love, but this is what I like for whatever reason. Some of these books on this list today, I don't fully know why I enjoyed them, but I did. And I'm excited to keep thinking about it so that I can figure out why the heck I enjoyed those books. So let's get into it. I have synopses for all of these books, and I'm just going to read from my computer screen because that's going to be easier, and we'll figure out how to make this fancier and more professional in the future. But I needed to just finally record this video and stop sitting on it. It's already May 4th. And this is an April recap. We're already late. This should have been done. The first book, one that many of you, if you were on this part of YouTube, you've heard of this book. You've probably read this book. You've probably seen and read many reviews on this book, but it is Babel by R.F. Kuang. It's a great book. I'm not going to give a long, in-depth interview. I'm not going to give a long, in-depth review of this book. Again, you've seen them. We've all seen the reviews. This book has hit the bookish world by storm. So Babel, or the necessity of violence. This is a tale of colonial resistance, student protest, and how language and translation can be used for both domination and liberation. It's set in the 1820s and 1830s and follows a young Chinese boy named Robin Swift, who was orphaned and later brought to London to be raised by a professor of Oxford University's Royal Institute of Translation, also known as Babel. And you see on the cover the Tower of Babel. There, scholars perform a unique form of magic using silver bars and translated words to power the British Empire. We see Robin grow up and have to come to terms with what it means to work for empire while continuing to reap the benefits of empire. His story becomes enmeshed with fraught interpersonal relationships, secret societies, and a quest for knowledge and understanding for change. But does revolution always require violence? Immediately after finishing this book, I wrote this in my notes. I started this with little idea what it was about. It's a slow burn that nearly turned me away, but events pick up and speed into the dawn. It stirred feelings, memories, regrets, and inklings of thoughts I can't ascribe value to. I don't like giving scores because books are more than a rubric. Was this amazing? Yes. Was it life-changing? Perhaps for some. Did it have issues? Absolutely. How do you translate a book to a score? Would I recommend? Yes. It's not a joyride, but it's also only a mere echo of the harshness of reality. And this is the center of my feelings about this book. It's fairly in your face, sometimes quite heavy-handed with the topics of imperialism and racism, sexism. It's over. It's there. You're not going to miss it. It's the whole point of the book. This type of story is needed. It's very important for us to, especially in these times, it's especially important for us to be not only reading these in an academic setting, but in our fiction, in our regular stories. We have how many books about the Dark One and the hero's journey?
And the final battle will begin! Heard enough, we're leaving.
And we have internalized this type of struggle. It's written from predominantly one point of view, Robin Swift's, the main characters. However, there are at times brief snippets from other characters' perspectives. Give or take, it is what it is. I do wish we had more of a window into what other characters were thinking. Since it's predominantly from one perspective, we only know what Robin's thinking. We see the overt, outward, external expressions and responses to what he does and what the world is doing from these other characters, and Kuang does a fantastic job of doing that within the limits she imposed upon herself by sticking to mostly one POV. But with that, I really wish we had I really wish we had more perspectives in this. Since it is a story of Robin coming to terms with he's, not only a victim of the British project, he's also gaining stuff from it. He is quite spoiled. And the characters talk about this. They say, hey, our lives are pretty good. What's going to happen if we tear it all down? Like a true professional. My camera battery went dead. I have no idea where I left off, but this is a good book. You should definitely read Babel. It was a difficult book for it to be like my first quote unquote like for fun book. I was like, oh yes, like a dark academia feel from what I heard. I knew it was going to be about imperialism and racism, so I knew it wasn't going to be like a lighthearted book by any means. But the writing was excellent. I very much so related to the translation side of things as an academic who I've taken a lot of translation courses. I've taken a lot of anthropology courses. Many of these topics were quite familiar to me, which was good and bad. While they could be heavy-handed, for me, I think someone who may not be as familiar with these topics, it would be a whole new world for them in a good way. But it does read a little post-colonial studies 101. I wish there had been more. As traumatic as the book is, I wish there had been more. I wish R.F. Kuang would have been able to go miles ahead with it and really dive into things. It felt kind of surface level in many respects. It's not a bad thing because, again, we don't have many books like this, or at least that I have come across in this fictional, like fantasy, magical space. So I'm excited to see what comes out in the future based off of people being inspired by this book. This is a great step one, in my opinion. So while it wasn't a perfect book for me, it was very much so deserving of its 4 stars. I am excited to read more R.F. Kuang. I've been trying to decide if I want to do Yellowface or Poppy War. I think I'm going to try to read Poppy War, but eventually I have so many other books. So again, not life-changing. I'm not like rushing out for the next book, and that is what holds it from being a 5-star, in my opinion. Okay, This Poison Heart was book 2 for April for me. I needed a win. I was coming off of Babel, and I said, that was a little difficult to read. Not technically difficult, but just like mentally, emotionally. It took me longer to read than I expected. I didn't fly through it because I almost gave up. It was such a slow start. And I said, you know what? Let's go to YA. I have not read in so long. I need a quick win. I need a quick victory that just jettisons me off into the realm of books again. So I read This Poison Heart, and I would give it a good 3.5 stars. When Briseis Green walks down the street, trees bow to her, and dead flowers bloom when she travels close. Even stranger plants, whose poison should surely kill, seem to not have much of an effect on her. One day, a stranger appears and tells Briseis that her birth aunt has died and left her home in upstate New York, complete with mysteries that one could expect from a fantastical YA inheritance plot. This Poison Heart follows Briseis as she learns to control her power and discover her family's past. It's a bit of a coming-of-age tale with a touch of adventure, deceit, and myth. 3.5 stars. It's YA. The plot, the stories are not life-changing. I enjoyed it for what it was. There's no super high emotional extremes, which I didn't expect there to be either. However, I did feel like for YA, for young adult books, even then, the stakes were never high. I thought they were. The book sets it up as if they're going to be very high stakes, but then it gives you, not quite like Deus Ex Machina, but it gives you a way out almost instantly. And that was frustrating. There are some emotional highs that the characters experience, and I so desperately wanted to experience those alongside the characters, but I was too removed because I didn't get to spend long enough in that feeling. I would have had to have placed the book down and come back to it later just so I could sit with it. But I didn't know that 2 sentences later, it was going to be over and something else was going to happen and help you get out of jail free card. I didn't know that was going to happen, and it's not for everything. I don't want to ruin anything for you. I don't want to spoil anything, but it was lacking for me. That said, I really enjoyed the mystery around Briseis that Bayron gave her. I thought the world building was inventive. It's set in our world, but without spoiling too much, it's kind of a magical society world hidden in plain sight sort of situation. And it was nice to get to see that and learn about this alongside Briseis. She also did a fantastic job at making me doubt absolutely everyone. Maybe I was a little jaded from Babel, but I was like, I don't trust that girl. Nope.
What betrayal trauma does to your brain?
Didn't trust anyone in the book. And to this day, even though I read the second book and I understand these characters' intentions, because they've been made clear over and over, time and time again, across the 2 books, I still don't trust some of them. Like they are written so well. I enjoy when I don't trust a character in a book, because I feel like that's exactly how the main character would be as well. That's how the protagonist is going to exist, especially someone who's a teenager. Briseis is well, maybe because she's a teenager, she trusts a little bit too quickly. But there's, in general humanity, maybe I'm just a very suspicious person. I do get fully suspicious around people. Maybe I should bring this up to my therapist. Anyway, I enjoyed the concept overall, and I was excited to read the second book. Now, most of these books I am presenting in the order I read. However, I'm going to go out of order for this one just because it's the second book in This Poison Heart duology, and they just need to go together. And I did read them fairly back to back. There was technically an audiobook in between, but in terms of physical books, they were back to back. I can't say much about this book. Even my synopsis, here's what I wrote for the synopsis. I can't say too much about this book, as it would spoil the plot of the first. But book 2 of This Poison Heart duology continues Briseis' story mere minutes after the first book ends. Again, without spoiling, it's a continuation of the hero's journey with even more exploration, quirky characters, and raised stakes, which is something that I did want from the first book. So it definitely elevated that. But at the end of the day, I think these 2 books should have been one book. The cliffhanger that it left off on, I think they were, let me see. Yeah, the first book came out in 2021. The second came out in 2022. I don't know exactly when Bayron wrote these, but I feel like before the first one came out, she probably had already started the second one. If not, was already done. I'm not sure. I have no idea about that, but they should have been one book. It wouldn't have been that long of a book, maybe a bit long for YA. I don't know. I'm sure the publishers decided these things, but I wish it had been one book where we could have, like I said, with This Poison Heart, it needed to breathe a bit more. At times we need to be able to sit in these emotions. And I think if it had been combined into one novel where we were given a little bit more room, because the second book also has this issue. There's a flurry of characters. There's a bunch of exciting, quirky characters that get introduced in the second book. And, some of them you love, some of them you hate. But you get to spend so little time with them that had they been a more overarching character, whether good or bad, whether friend or foe, villain or angel, I wish we had had more time to spend with all of them so that we could build up that emotional connection, so that when things happen, we can truly celebrate with them, or we can cry for them, whatever the emotion requires at the time. I would like to see more in this world. If Kailyn Bayron wrote a third book, I would definitely read it, because I like I like the concept. I thought it was really cool. Now, that said, I don't for the present plot line, because the plot line, again, it's a continuation. The second book is a continuation of the first. Just a couple minutes after the first one ends, it's really the same story. The third book would have to change the plot line. It was a complete story. It ended. So you would have to do something else, but I would be interested in reading more in her world. I would just hope that it could breathe a bit more. Okay, I don't know what number book this is. I think book 4 of the month. technically book 3. It was an audiobook. I tend to listen to audiobooks when I'm walking places, whenever I'm like cleaning my apartment, sitting on the bus, whatever. I typically have like 2 books at a time. I don't like going back and forth between books. I know some people go back and forth all the time. I only do it between physical and audiobooks, so I can at least keep those separate. I can't read like 2 different physical books at the same time. And honestly, I don't really like audiobooks. I do in a way, but I prefer a physical book, but I can't read a physical book while I'm walking down the street. That would be dangerous. Anyway, I really wanted to enjoy this next book. This is How You Lose the Time War. I heard such fantastic things about it. It wasn't bad. I think the book was technically good. We'll get to the review in a second, but 3 stars. This is How You Lose the Time War is a sci-fi epistolary novel where, much like the 2 main characters, the audience learns about the world and the characters through a series of letters passed back and forth throughout time. It's the story of 2 time-traveling secret agents that work for rival organizations in the far future. I don't want to spoil too much of this, but it's a short read, and it's better to go in not knowing too much. I heard such good things about this book, that it was life-changing. It was on Twitter back when Twitter was actually Twitter and like not a complete cesspool. The prose was gorgeous, but something about it, it didn't vibe. I didn't vibe with it. I really didn't. I didn't DNF. It's a super short book. I don't have exactly, I think it was only like a 4-hour listen. Like it was very short. So it wasn't, you don't have to spend too long with it. I almost DNF'd this book as well. I'm always very close to DNFing a book. Like if it doesn't start very strong, I'm just like, oh, you know what? I have so many other things to be doing right now. But I'm glad I didn't. This was a fantastic story. And it is something I would consider reading again in the future. I'm not in a rush to do it, but I might read it again. I think it is a book that is set up to be read more than once. I kind of resent the fact that I need to read it more than once to get as much out of it. But it is what it is. This is a very minor bit. I was distracted sometimes with the sci-fi nature because while I'm not a scientist and I don't have like a great understanding of all things science, even the science that was in this book sometimes just didn't make sense. It's not that it was like complex, it was just wrong.
It's clear that the topic and scope of the paper didn't get properly reviewed by a community of like-minded scientists.
That frustrated me a little bit. I'm all for futuristic things. I mean, sci-fi, you have to have a novum. You have to have like this new thing in it. And within this book, the new science, the new technology is how I won't spoil how they do it, but it's how these agents are passing letters back and forth. I thought that was so cool. But there are bits and pieces here and there where their scientific worlds are described and discussed, and it just brought me out of the fantasy. I was like, no, that's because it's ostensibly like in our far future. And there's some basic things that just like I would go back and check it if I had the physical book, but I'm not gonna like scrub through the audiobook to try to find these sections. So the story was fantastic. The prose was beautiful. The characters were well designed. It took too long to get into the story. It took too long to really start developing, but it also didn't have the slow burn feel. It was just kind of boring. It was just boring. I'm sorry. I am so sorry. But again, not all books are for everyone. I can't spoil too much about, I don't want to spoil too much about this, so I can't go in depth of like why I didn't like things and why there were redeeming factors to it and why it is good for a second read through. Give it a shot. Again, it was 3 stars. That means it's a good book. But yeah. And maybe it was the fact that it was an epistolary novel and I had never read one before. So this is my first epistolary novel. I'm sure others will enjoy it immensely. It just wasn't the book for me. And that's okay. Okay, next book. I've lost count at how many we're at. The Last Son by Katie Edwards came out in 2018. 4 stars. Asterisk. we're gonna talk about that asterisk. This book tells the story of Rune St. John, a scion and last member of the Sun Court, a powerful family that once held much power in the city of New Atlantis before they were destroyed. Rune is hired by Lady Justice to find her missing son, Adam. Along the way, he and his companion and bodyguard Brand and other compatriots they meet along the way face creatures of legend, inner house politics, and the need for basic survival. It's set in the city of New Atlantis, which is here on Earth, but is a magically fortified mismatch of human architecture and Atlantean magic. The society is structured around powerful, practically royal magical families that embody Tarot's major arcana. I already mentioned Sun and Justice, but we also have like the Tower, the Lovers, among others. So I feel like there's a theme. I almost DNF'd this one. I think this is every single book besides this Poison Heart and this Wicked Fate that I almost DNF'd. But I did it. Like, it took so long to get into the story. Part of the reason this channel exists is because of this book. So thank you, Katie Edwards, for inspiring me to get on this here platform and praise and gripe about your book in particular. This is such a cool concept. I love tarot. And to have the arcana come out into the world and be their own people, and like, so you can see the motivations behind someone that embodies like the Sun card, or doesn't really, that would have been his dad. Anyway, you do meet the Tower, and like somebody that embodies the Tower card. I thought it was really cool how I did that. And like, again, there's a longer review coming, but it was such a cool concept to have the major arcana be these like royal families. They're not really royal, but effectively royal families with like inner family, like politics. And there's a cool part where Rune, the main character, he talks about how these families don't really help you if you are struggling. They said, it's your fault. And like, I mean, obviously it's not a cool thing, but like, it gives so much character to them. It's more they pity you. So his entire family, all of like the staff, everything was destroyed, and he's still alive. And people just kind of pity him because almost like it was a character flaw. The fact that, you know, they were just too weak. And so it's just like, wow, like this provides so much perspective on this world. And I thought it was a really cool concept. It's kind of like D&D many times, not only in the pacing, it's incredibly fast paced in some ways. And then in other ways, it's not fast at all. Like the fight scenes are fast. If you've ever played a TTRPG, you have like an overarching plot that can take years to get through, to get to like the big bad. But you get these short little scenes every week when you meet with your table. And that's how this book felt. So it was like simultaneously taking forever to like get to the point, kind of like me, but also was very fast. But there's gay romance, there's lovable and hateable personalities, even if they're a bit one-dimensional. At times, if there's an angry character, for example, they're kind of just pretty much always angry. If it's an aloof character, they're pretty much always aloof. And so that's a downside. The book was written from one perspective. You only are following Rune's perspective. One of the things I would love to see in the future is maybe a bit of multi-POV, just to give us more from more of like the internal thoughts that other characters are going through. And if I were to give some arbitrary ratings for this, again, this is the first book that I reviewed myself and decided to make this channel for. The magic system, which relies on cantrips and single-use spells that get stored and charged daily, and stored in these little jewelry sigils that the families wear. 6 out of 10. There's actually 3 magic systems. Technically 2. I'm going to argue for 3. Again, watch the longer review. I'm working on it. It's I don't know how long it's going to be, but I'm working on it. Okay? Wait for it. Characters, 7 out of 10. Despite them being one-dimensional at times, they're absolutely lovable. I will say the name of one character, Quinn. So precious. Like, I am just in love with, although there's not much like depth to some of these characters, the personalities are so well written that like, I don't even know the word. I get lovable. I love to love the characters and I love to hate some characters. Katie Edwards did a great job with that part, but I want to get a little bit more. I would like to see more humanity in them by having a little bit more depth. A character can't always be good. They can't always be bad. They can't always be angry. There's got to be a bit more. So overall, 4 stars. I almost gave it 3 stars, however. The biggest problem with this story, and I really hope that Edwards changes it in the future, is Deus Ex Machina. Every single time, this is the spoilers. Like, there's a lot of Deus Ex Machina. It's just, the world is set up to have such high stakes, and we have seen the ramifications of things going wrong. We've seen the ramifications of the atrocities that go on in this world. But much like D&D, it felt like the game master, it felt like the dungeon master did not want their characters to struggle too much or die. Like, there was always, like, this didn't happen, but it was like the effect of, oh gosh, I am going to perish. Everything is gone. Wait, what's that glint in the sky? A magic sword, the tale of legends that has been lost for 10,000 years. It's fallen directly into my hand. And as it fell through the giant monster and killed them. And now I have this sword and I didn't have... I'm not saying kill your characters off, Edwards. And I'm also not saying that they didn't. But, like, stop it with the Deus Ex Machina. Like, I beg you. Like, it was just every time. All of this said, I have the second book. There's already 3 books, and I know the 4, 5, and 6 already have titles, and I think they have release dates. So I'm not sure how far along Edwards is in writing them, but pretty far, I believe. There's also some... I don't know if you call them a novella. There's extra content, like stories between stories that I'm going to read actually before I read the second book. I think there's one that happens in between. This is a little like side stories, short stories. And so I'm excited to look into those. But I believe it's supposed to be a 9-book series. I'm saying this out of love. 4 stars, but there's an asterisk because you were almost 3 stars, because technically the book was not great. It had a lot of problems, but it is one of the few on this list that has absolutely stuck with me for now, like a few weeks. Like, something about this world and these characters keep drawing me back in, even though it wasn't like a technically good book. Be on the lookout for the longer review. If you can tell, I have a lot of opinions on this. Also, I forgot, I actually do still have the physical books, so I can show you. Most of my books come from the library, so I have to return them after I read them, but I do have some. So the first 5-star book of the month, Blood Over Brighthaven by M.L. Wong. This was such a good book. I did not almost DNF this one. This was the first book that I almost didn't DNF. In fact, immediately after reading the first chapter of this book, just to give you an idea, I messaged a friend and I said, I think this is getting the elusive 6th star. This is one of the best things I have ever read in my entire life. I had to take a break after the first chapter to take deep breaths and just sit. It felt like a train on my chest. It was so good. This is the story of Siona, a young, studious woman who sets out to prove the patriarchy wrong. She's the first woman to ever be admitted to the High Magistracy at the University of Magics and Industry. Colored by a dark academia aesthetic, Blood Over Brighthaven follows Sayona as she navigates a world that not only wasn't made for her, but one that hopes she fails. She's joined by her would-be assistant, a janitor working at the High Magistracy, who before coming to the town of Tehran was a nomadic hunter who lost his family on the way to Sanctuary. This book is a story of power, patriarchy, pride, and prejudice.
You have bewitched me, body and soul, and I love.
The first chapter was great, but if you notice, I did not give this book 6 stars. I really wanted it to stay as just like emotionally charged and mysterious and gut-wrenching as the first chapter. But it didn't. Wong gives too much away. I love books that have foreshadowing and red herring, so you're never quite sure what you should be picking up on, and you're kind of like picking up on everything, and it's exciting. But there's a major thing that happens in the book, a revelation that I figured out like on like page like 30 or like 30. Like I figured out early in the book, and I had like suspicions before then, but it was just kind of like cemented by then. But then wasn't like the revelation didn't happen until like 100 or 200 pages in the book. And I was like, you've already made this clear. And it was, it kept happening every single time. There was nothing, the book was just spoiling itself. And again, this is like one of the only like negative things about this book. Had it not been doing that, I still don't know if it would have got to 6 star, but it would have been a much stronger 5 stars. The prose is great. The characters are wonderful. The main character, Sayona, she is not perfect. She is flawed, and I appreciate that. This is a woman who very much so embodies sort of like almost like a white woman trope at this point, where she is struggling in a patriarchal world that is against her because of her gender, and where people think women should be, get in the kitchen type of thing. But she also is not othered like the people. So her assistant, he is from outside of the city. He is a foreigner. He is a different race. He speaks a different language. He is the one that is othered and ostracized. He is the foreigner. She does not experience the same struggles that he does because she's effectively a white woman in this situation. And the book does a great job, I think, with showing that you can have a protagonist that like does something great. If you think of like historical figures, you can have someone that did such great things, and then like you read a quote by them, and it's like, ooh, maybe they're not like a perfect hero there. And Wong like really shows that in these characters, and I think it makes them much more relatable to the realities of our world, even though this is much more fantastical than Babel. The fact that I read them in the same month, I didn't know they were going to be pretty similar. I think Blood Over Brighthaven, for what it does and like what Babel was, I think it did it better. Babel wasn't bad, but this one did it better. Yet the world building is plentiful. It was very clear. I think there's a map at the front too, which is also nice. I love a good map to know where we're going. The magic system, which I don't think is a spoiler for me to describe the magic system. It's based on essentially these magical typewriters and kind of like coding language. Like they're coding into these magical typewriters and like hit enter and it runs the magical code to do things. I'm decent with Python, but I think someone who truly is a coder might have issues with it at times. Like it's too, they may have issues. It didn't bother me. It's just, I bought it. Like it, I was like, you know what? It's fine. It's fine. I enjoyed it. So it wasn't my favorite, but it was well done for what it was. And similar to Babel, which I don't really want to like compare the books, but I read them in the same month, so it was hard not to. This was somewhat heavy-handed at times with patriarchy and racism, but at the same time, we desperately need books like this because, again, there's not much out there in the fantasy space, I feel like, that deal with issues that we are still having day-to-day life. We can look at a book and be like, oh yeah, like we understand, like the the bad guys are the ones who think women should be in the kitchen always. Like, we get that, but the fact that we still need to say it because it still exists, books like this are important. And so it was heavy-handed at times, but it did, I think, give it a little bit more nuance that I was hoping for with Babel, where you get to see some of the downsides because you have you have a little bit more from the side character. You have a little bit more of his POV. You get to see that while Siona is breaking the glass ceiling and, like tearing some things down here and there, as she's like striving her own path, how it's affecting those less fortunate than her. And how many times those who are minorities, whatever type of minority, in a particular situation, often, unfortunately, have to just kind of like swallow their pride for someone else. It's a problem in society. And this book deals with that a bit more and shows, I don't want to say pros and cons, but it shows the upsides and downsides of having to compromise, that we can't necessarily save the world and do everything and solve everything. We have to go like step by step, even if going one step forward is 3 steps back over there, and trying to navigate that. I think it's a very human problem, and I appreciated that being in this book. My gosh, that first chapter was so good. Like, I can't stop thinking about that first chapter. It's not 6 stars. It's definitely 5 stars. And I had considered, when I was writing up my notes, I had considered putting it like 4.5, because surprisingly, despite the effects that first chapter had on me, the book didn't really sit with me. I think that's partially due to the book that I read after this, so we'll talk in just a second. But I'm sticking with my gut and saying 5 stars. Let me know if you disagree. Let me know if it is well-deserved. Okay, the next book. I can't say too much about this book. This is another one of those that I don't want you going in with spoilers. But The Binding by Bridget Collins. I actually listened to the audiobook by Carl Prekop, narrated by Carl Prekop. Fantastic, but I loved this book so much that I instantly went online and bought a physical copy, used. Like, I got it pretty cheap, but I was like, I need this book so that I can like see this book on my shelf and remember everything that I went through reading this book. It is that good. 5 stars. It's not clear. It came out in 2019. I can't say too much, and I highly encourage you to not look up anything about this book, not even like tags. I even think like the book's own blurb and like a synopsis at the front cover, and especially if you look up the synopsis on Goodreads or Storygraph, don't look at those. Don't look at them. The Binding follows Emmett Farmer, a young man called away from home to begin an apprenticeship as a book binder, a vocation shrouded in mystery, fear, magic, and prejudice. For books have the unique and dangerous capacity to capture a person's memories. While I recommend not viewing the tags, given the nature of like a person's memories and capturing those, and the reason you would capture memories is sometimes you want them forgotten, I will say there's a general content warning for all things traumatic, occasionally vivid portrayals of abuse and death. It's written in 3 parts with a change in perspective each time. And I didn't catch that because I happened to stop the audiobook right after it said part 2 and forgot that it said part 2. So I was very confused when I picked up the book again. And then I finally just went with it. And then it got to part 3 and I heard it say part 3 and I was like, cool, I know exactly what's going on here. But in case you missed it like I did, it's in 3 parts, 3 different perspectives. Okay, I'm really going to be looking at my notes for this because I want to be careful to not spoil anything. Again, do not look this book up. So I'm going to look at my notes to like try to like keep me contained. So this is something that I wrote immediately after finishing reading. I don't know whether to say bless you or f*** you, Bridget Collins. That was like my only comment. I was like that and then 5 stars. I made like a little story on Instagram. That's all I said. The characters have depth, The world setting was clear. The magic system of the book is simple but effective. It's just the book. Like that's like the only magic that's going on. It's pretty much our world, but just like like an older, everybody's riding horses, but there's like some carriages. Like it's European adjacent type of world. It's not a fantastical book. Again, there's not much magic to it. There are no dragons or anything. It's very like real world, but it is an exploration of humanity. And I became emotionally attached, both good and bad, to these characters. Like I hated the characters I was supposed to hate. I loved the others. And then if there was like somebody who was kind of gray, I was also shifting that as I went. Once again, I highly recommend the audiobook. The narrator was amazing, not only for having these emotions come out, but it was a very slow pace. And I think even though it was a slow burn, you need to lean into it. Just like trust the process. Trust the process. There were a couple bits of dialogue that I remember that I felt were misacted in terms of emotional delivery, but I would have to go back and like re-listen to those to figure out, maybe it was like foreshadowing and I just missed that it was foreshadowing. But I specifically remember there was a couple points. I don't remember where they were or what was even said. I just remember noticing and kind of being brought out of the fantasy to be like, oh, that the words and the emotion being performed didn't line up, but it was only like 2 spots and then everything else was great. But listening to the audiobook was perfect because especially with the ending, I did look up a couple reviews after I read it and some people were complaining about, they were like, oh, the end was like too quick. Y'all, I was literally pacing in my living room back and forth for the last 30 minutes to an hour of this book. Like legitimately pacing. I kid you not. I was standing up, walking back and forth, and then I would sit down and my hands were here and I didn't want to listen to chipmunk voice, so I didn't speed it up. I know if I had the physical book at that time, I would have been speed reading through and probably missed something and maybe I would have been let down. But having the audiobook and that journey and truly having to hang on to every single word, I can still feel it in my chest. And I finished this like a few weeks ago. At this point, and I can still feel it. I had to talk. I finished it the day before I went to therapy. My entire therapy session the next day was talking about this book because I don't want to spoil anything, so I need to stick to my notes. I had emotions at the end I didn't know what to do with. I remember thinking it's I didn't know how to have catharsis. That was the exact words I turned and told my therapist. Is I don't know how to have catharsis. And it's not really it's the book's fault, but it's not the book's fault. I'm not going to say anything about the ending, but where it leaves you. But there were so many confusing emotions that I had with this. And I love that. I love if a book can the amount of tension and anxiety that it created, but in a good, I was oh, this is so good. This is what I've been looking for. I don't want to promise that it's going to affect you this way. I'm talking it up real big. If you read it and you hate it, because it is a very slow burn, a very, very, very slow burn. I think it pays off. But if you read it and you hate it, fine. Blame me because it was my recommendation, but blame yourself for being inhuman and cold-hearted. No, if you hate it, that's fine. I'm curious if other people enjoyed this. This is one of those books I'm not entirely sure because I still haven't figured out all of my emotions. I'm still not entirely sure why it affected me the way it did. I have some theories and I can't spoil it to say why I have I don't even want to do an in-depth review in the off chance that someone accidentally clicks it and gets any one bit of this book spoiled. Because there are some big parts that just sure, you can have foreshadowing and all, but let the book foreshadow it. If you think, oh yeah, that was obvious. I was expecting, okay, that's fine. But you let the book do it. I didn't spoil it for you. Okay. Out of all of the books I have ever read in my entire life, and again, I took many years off because of school, for reading for fun. This book evoked more emotions than any book I've ever read of this type of emotion. I've had other emotional books, but this has stood out. It is on my top list, favorites, whatever I want to call it. I'm making the list right now. This is on that list of my favorite books of all time. And I didn't expect that, but it has literally stuck with me for so long. It's only 435 pages. I looked it up. 15 and a half hours of audio. So it's like, it's not that long if you do end up not enjoying it. And if you read it, you're going to go a lot faster than 15 and a half hours. Like if, you can block me if you hate it. If you take my recommendation, you read it and you hate it, okay, block me, fine. But if you love it, you have to subscribe. That is the deal that I'm setting. You can block me or you can subscribe. There's no in between. Ball's in your court. Okay, I need to wrap this up. I just checked. I have been recording for over an hour at this point. So the next book, I needed a palate cleanser after Babel, that was tough enough. And then Blood Over Brighthaven. And then it just kept growing and growing and growing. Legends and Lattes. 4 stars. This is a cozy book. It is established the genre of cozy fantasy. This was great. As it says at the top of the book, a novel of high fantasy and low stakes. This is not a spoiler because it is literally on the front cover. There's going to be a happy end. The stakes are so low, but the book sets out to do that. Earlier, I was saying I wanted the stakes to be higher in books. Those were books that set out to have high stakes and presented them as if they're high stakes. This super, super low, things are going to work out. There is tension, there is conflict, but it is so low stakes. It's refreshing. And sometimes we need more books like this. This is just fun. It was a light little jaunt. It wasn't that long of a book. I already have the second one. I'm ready to read it, but I'm saving it to be another lighthearted thing in the middle. The story follows Viv, an orc that moves to a new town to open a coffee shop and set down roots for a new life. The problem is, no one in Thune has ever even heard of coffee. In her effort for coziness, Viv meets a host of quirky characters and has to come to terms with the reality of her new life away from the battlefield. Again, it's a great palate cleanser. I can't say that enough. It's a good book. It's not going to be a Penguin classic, high literature, anything, but what it is setting out to do, it does, and it does it really darn well. So read the book. It's cozy. It's happy. It's self-aware. I can't review books that I haven't read, but I've heard of some others that are trying to take kind of the success of Legends and Lattes and build off of that. And sometimes they don't do it as well and are a little bit more tropey and cliche. This didn't have any of that. It was just a sincerely good story that made you wonder, but it was more you just really enjoy the getting to know the character and getting to see her new life, start her new life. And that's just really cool. Okay, the next book, it was also an audiobook, Skin of the Sea, which is by Natasha Bowen from 2021. 4 stars. Simidele is a mamiwata, a mermaid, who collects the souls of those who die at sea and blesses them on their journeys beyond. All is well until Simi accidentally breaks an ancient decree when she saves a boy who had not yet passed on. By revealing herself to a human, Simi must make amends with the Supreme Creator, but incredible danger stands between her and her destination. Not only is Simi's life at risk, but the fate of the entire world depends on her success. Set in a world where Orishas and other Yoruba mythological creatures walk among us, Skin of the Sea is a story of magic, friendship, redemption, and peace. This was such a good book. I listened to the audiobook, which was great because there's a decent amount of Yoruba in it and I wouldn't know how to pronounce it. And so having someone, I believe the voice actor was Yetide Badaki, who is a Nigerian actress who she's been in quite a bunch of stuff. What I learned after, because I was looking her up on Instagram, oh, you've been in you're not just not just a voice actor, but been on TV, done tons of things. I was oh, this is really cool. I want to look more into her career because it was really well voice acted. The downside of all that is I also don't know how any of these things are spelled. So if I say the name wrong, it's just based off of what I heard. I've never seen these words written down because I didn't have the physical book in front of me. It's written from Simi's POV, but I think does a decent job at letting us know what the other characters are thinking without them seeming like they're one-dimensional or anything. They're not just a facade of a character. These are well fleshed out characters, both the humans as well as the Orishas that are going on, which she is interacting with often. The downside of that is not only she's definitely a protagonist, she has her faults. pretty much all the characters in the book do have faults, which is also refreshing to not have a perfect character. Sometimes I just wanted to like reach into the book and just like shake her and be like, no, stop, you idiot. And it was kind of like for every character. I kept wanting to do that. And I think that's good writing. If I can have like such an emotional response to a character like that, great, fantastic. This book has also made me want to dive further into Yoruba and Ifa like mythologies, which I do have one other like book that's at least partially set in Nigeria. And I was like, okay, this is a side of culture I'm not as familiar with, and I've added a few books since starting Skin of the Sea, including its sequel. It is a duology. I've added a few more books that are based on Orishas and Yoruba mythology, and I'm excited to learn more. It's just not something that I have much experience with, but it's fascinating. So with that said, I can't really comment on how accurate the portrayals are between like real life beliefs and how they were in the book, but it was appealing and makes me want to read more, even if not just in Bowen's world, but other books as well, to just learn what other people have to say. Because even the Orishas were written in a fantastical yet relatable way, which again, I think is a good, for a book that is dealing with the concept of humanity, is refreshing. In comparison to some of the other books, the stakes are quite high, and I believe those stakes. The world shows us the repercussions or the implications of breaking a decree. When you break a decree set by the Supreme Creator, the book kind of shows you what happens with that. And so while I didn't necessarily think that anything too bad was going to happen to the main character, partially because I knew there's already a second book and she's on the cover of that as well. Like I was like, okay, she's going to, she's still going to be around in some way. I wasn't too concerned. All of the other characters I was very concerned for. And so I think it did the stakes pretty well with that. The characters are well fleshed out. The world is vivid. But like I said before, there's a lot of like, no, stop, you idiot. I'm like, ugh. The book does have some content warnings that it makes you aware of. It's like dealing with the slave trade and lots of like abuse and death, but it's really not, I feel it's not the central feature of the book. So I don't think it's I don't think it's overdone. So it's like the content warnings are there because they should be there, but I would say don't worry. It's not the central part of I am looking forward to the second one. I, based off of the title and everything and like where the book left off, I can kind of guess what the main premise is going to be, but and I'm excited to read it, but because I want to do an audiobook, I don't have it queued up in Libby or anything, and so it's going to take some time before I do all of that. So I'm not like rushing out to get there, but it was a good book. I'm going to read the next one, and I will probably check in on some more of Bowen's writings because it really was nice writing. So I do recommend. Okay, the final book of April, Death of the Author by Nnedi Okorafor. Came out this year. I just happened upon it and like, oh, that looks interesting. Wait, I recognize the author. I told you earlier that I read like 2 books in 2022. One of them was by Okorafor and called Remote Control. Quite good. Maybe I'll read it again, review it again in the future. It's much shorter than this. This 5 stars, fantastic book. The story follows Zelu, a woman who is absolutely going through it. Already the outcast in her large Nigerian family for being disabled, outspoken, and a writer rather than like a successful lawyer or doctor. She's fired from her teaching job at the same time her book is rejected by another publisher. Amidst her breakdown at her sister's wedding, Zelu begins to write a story like never before. A sci-fi tale of AI and androids after the extinction of humanity. What she doesn't realize is how this step will drastically change not only her life, but all of those around her. All I can say is whoa. Immediately after finishing the book, I wrote, there were ups and downs, and I have a weird, uncertain emotion behind my eyes right now. There's clarity, yet so much more. 5 stars. This book is beautifully written. The main character is flawed, relatable. amazing. I have so much to say, so I'm going to stick to my notes again. Similarly, the other characters are well written, and they lack a little bit of depth, but we do get the occasional swap in POV, because there's alternating sections throughout the story. And it's one of the unique things about this book. It's sort of a book within a book. Since Zello is an author, you're reading parts of her story. And this is a good thing and a bad thing, where every single chapter, mostly, you have a switch in POV, and sometimes that perspective is just like you reading her story. But it's almost like every single chapter. And so at times I felt like I could not really dive in emotionally. Even with Zelu, who you return to every time, I felt like I couldn't dive in emotionally because some of the chapters were short. It's like as soon as something would get going, I'm like, oh, it's over. It's just like, okay, I'll come back to it in a minute, and would try to rush through. Some of these chapters are only a couple pages long, but it's just the fact that it breaks up. It was frustrating to me at times. The idea of AI in a book kind of hits home in a bad way today. I don't know how I felt. I think it was handled really well, but I was definitely iffy with just the general idea of having AI. But again, I think Okorafor handled it very well. So one other issue I had, and the book does justify all of these things, or rather, the book explains these things. I don't think they're fully justified. There were a few parts throughout that confused me, and in some ways I thought were foreshadowing, but maybe a red herring. And I love that in a book. But it ended up getting really confusing at one part. Some of my foreshadowing, I was like, oh, I got that wrong, which I was happy about. But then I was confused. I'm being very vague on purpose. The book ends up kind of explaining some of these confusions. I don't think it fully justifies it, but at least they were intentional. This is a book that has stuck with me. I highly recommend it. It stuck with me on a philosophical level. I kind of want to read it again. 5 stars. I do want to read this book again. I have so many other books, so I'm not going to reread it right now. I need to talk to people about this book. It is such a good book. If you want a full review on it, let me know in the comments and I will get to work on it. But just know 5 stars, I highly recommend. Also, a bit of a Easter egg. I don't know if that's the right word, but if you have a library copy or a book that's not this edition, library copy, because I can't take the dust jacket off. It's all taped on. I'm going to put up an image of what the hardcover looks like. It's just a nice little wink, wink, nudge, nudge to more of what's in the book. Because again, it's a book within a book. And so the cover is a bit different, as you can see here. Okay, so that was the 10 books that I read in April. This was an exciting month to get started reading again. And now having this channel is just going to keep me going. I already have a bunch of the books that I've technically already read. One book in May, I've already finished, Wizard of Earthsea. We'll wait on a review for that for my May recap. And there will be other reviews coming along. Some of the books I'm looking into, I've already actually started Assassin's Apprentice, which is book 1 of the Farseer trilogy by Robin Hobb. I've been told it's going to be super traumatic and depressing, which is why I've saved things like Bookshops and Bone Dust, the second book in the Legends and Lattes. I'm saving some of these lighthearted books to go in between the trauma. But I have tons of books planned. I've technically already planned out books all the way through August, but that's going to change because I go to the library 3 times a week, and then I have used bookstores nearby. And so I'm super excited. Thank you for watching. Let me know what you think of these books and what I should read in the future. One of the most exciting things about getting into reading after essentially taking off 15 years is all of these big books that everyone's read. These new classics I've never read. And I'm so excited. I get to do it everybody's oh, if I could just read Mistborn for the first time and just remember, have that feeling for the first time, I get to do it. I've already bought my copy because I found some cheap ones on eBay. I have Mistborn. I've got The Expanse. I have some stuff that I'm so excited to read, and I get to do it for the first time. And I feel like I'm at an age that I can, I'm going into it with the expectation of I know that this is going to be the first time, and I really get to enjoy this. And so I'm super excited. And I want to bring you all along with me. So until next time, I love you. Goodbye. Mwah.